I just wanted to start things off with how you joined Tonik and what was the behind your decision, especially coming from your previous roles to join Tonik, and what was the first few days like?
Well, mine joining in Tonik was very simple. Greg came to Myanmar,
Right.
where I was living at the time, and he said, you should join Tonik. And I'm like, I'm not sure. I will go and check, because first time I signed the job offer to Myanmar with Greg, I never checked the country. And I said, no, I'm not doing the same mistake twice. I will go and check Philippines first. So I went to Philippines and I fell in love with Manila. Now it's difficult to believe that, but actually Manila really impressed me very much. And also the whole ambition of it, launching something so big and crazy. That's kind of the challenge that I like.
What was it about Manila that you really like?
Surprisingly, the food. Because again, I was living in Myanmar by that time. So compared to Myanmar, Manila was like Singapore. Yeah, I liked Manila for your malls, for the services you have. So on my scouting visit, I already did a piercing in my ear.
The first thing.
Yes. So the amount of things, like how dynamic is the city and how nice are people. Everyone speaks English, so you understand how nice they are, because Myanmar people are also great, but since they don't speak English, you most probably will never know that. But in Philippines, I saw such a sincere, positive attitude towards me, towards foreigners, towards each other. People are very polite and very nice and helpful, and they actually sincerely want to help you with all the struggles you have when you arrive for the first time. I was quite scared when I arrived, because Manila has questionable reputation, let's put it this way, in the media. But straight away in the airport, there were a couple of ladies who helped me, because my phone died after long trip from Myanmar and I couldn't call Grab, anything. And there were just people helping me just for the sake of helping me. And I was so deeply impressed with that. So yeah, probably people.
We'll get back to that a little bit more in terms of like how you, I guess, assimilated into culture and how it impacts the way you do customer experience. But I wanted to ask, was customer experience sort of the first pitch for the role for you here at Tonik?
No, it was digital growth and product. Actually, it was growth from the very beginning.
Right.
So straight away on my first business card, it was already chief growth hacker. My scope was product, launching Tonik itself, designing the first product line, and growing the business, sales, everything.
Right. And how would you, I guess, for people who, I guess, growth hacker isn't a common title given to people, like how would you like describe that role, especially in the context of Tonik?
Yeah, I think context of Tonik is very important here, because in modern digital app-first organizations, there is no such 100% clear black and white split between what different functions do. It's not the same. When I was working with Greg in Ukrainian Platinum Bank, we had sales, we had marketing, and there is a clear border, who does what. And there is another clear border, and what is product doing. But when your organization is so blended, and especially when it's startup, your role is not as defined, because your growth will come from very many different, sometimes small, sometimes big details. Fine-tune the process here, launch the new audience here, develop new product here, or work with risks on this one, or work with IT on putting, I don't know, making your application smoother. So it all together, probably a growth hacker is someone who is taking care of the growth, which is not as obvious and not as easy to put it in the table or Excel. It's about addressing very different parts of the organization and business that will help you to eventually reach your business targets.
Right.
And that can be in any kind of roles or any kind of departments across the company. So
yeah. Given that I guess it's a pretty wide scope, like depending on how you approach things, I'm sure you have some principles that you keep in mind. Like what are some of those principles when it comes to, customer experience or growth hacking that you have, I guess, over the years that you've been working with Tonik?
Definitely the data. That I want things to be proven by data. If we are talking about some growth opportunities, that we shall look at the data, we shall look at the data properly, to make sure those data were captured correctly, there are no biases and no statistical errors in those data, and that we are making our decisions on the correct data. Because we had a different experience as well, and that was painful. So that's first. Second is probably, I think my team would cry when I say that, is asking why. Because when you are challenging status quo, when you are a newcomer on the market, and when you are trying to build something that was not there before, like never, there is a lot of legacy that come in to you from different other organizations on the market. So basically, like if you're a bank, you have to eventually hire people who worked in the bank, and they tend to work the way they used to work. It's not necessarily product or sales or marketing, any function. And that's why the question why that brought us to eliminating so many problems, troubles, barriers for customers.
How are those principles affected by the culture, the Philippine culture, right? I was curious to know if there's some impact from that, especially with what you experienced.
There is not necessarily 100% match, because we see that people, especially experienced people that are coming from the other cultures, are not always ready for the question why. They are not always ready to question the status quo themselves and to challenge anything. Because of the traditional hierarchy in the companies in Philippines, they are not always ready for them. For this. So what can you do about it? First, you can make sure that you hire proper people, so that in the process of interview, you make sure that those would be the ones who will not be afraid to talk to someone who is older or higher ranked. But if you see that he's doing something wrong, you should challenge, or if you know the better way to do it, you should challenge it despite the rank or age, right? So not everyone is ready to do that. So I'm trying to find those people in interview, not just me, everyone in Tonik. First is when you try to find those people, and second is how you encourage them to do that, how you encourage them to practice this challenge in the status quo, shooting for the best for the customer. You have to show it, of course, with your own example, and also support them very much, because for many Filipinos, it's quite a shift in mindset of being able to question things. Like it took us a while to teach, for example, marketing team go back to IT and said, what's that? We want it different. I mean, it shouldn't be like this. Or why did that happen? Explain us why did that happen? Because we are on the front line with the customer, and this trouble happened. Explain us why. We need to know. And then going back to, for example, customer care and saying like, look, we have to do something so it wouldn't happen again. So to gain this voice, of course, it's a lot of support from Manco members, from top management.
There's this, I guess, constant questioning of why. Is there a particular feature or product feature or product that Tonik has released where, it was a result of that kind of conversation?
It's our DNA,
right,
to do things not the way they used to be done, but in a way that is the best, first of all, for customers.
Could you maybe frame
of
that
course,
out
of course.
for
For example, when we were launching our first deposit proposition on the market, and we were launching time deposits. We wanted time deposits. We wanted to give higher interest to people, but we were told by the product managers that time deposits are not common in Philippines. People will not go for interest rate. People will not go for time deposits. They used to savings accounts. No one will be buying the deposits.
Because they're not that flexible, at least the traditional ones.
Yeah. And so people will not buy. And then when we were coming with our series of questions why, and then appeared that the interest rates are usually very small. So people never associated time deposit with basically investment tool and earning with your savings. This whole idea was not there. So we launched them. But again, how do you launch them is also a different thing. Almost by the time when we started, because since that moment, a lot of things shifted off the market. And I'm very proud of it because it shifted because of us. We came, we disrupted, we shook the market.
And everybody else followed.
And everybody else followed. Yeah, this is something I'm really proud, because all the Filipinos are benefiting from this today. So we were told that time deposits, interest should be different depending on the amount. So bigger time deposit should earn more. which was completely illogical for me at that time. And again, I was like, why? Because it is set up this way, because customers know that it should work this way. The bigger is your deposit, yeah, the higher is your interest rate. And we said, like, no, there is no logic. People should have the same access to earning interest independent of their income. They can start from 5,000 pesos and have the same earning as those who have millions, because that would be fair. That would be better for Filipinos and also for us, because we didn't want to end up with, 100 customers with millions and millions pesos. No, we want to end up with million of customers, 5,000 pesos each. That's our target.
Do you have any example on the loan side?
I mean, obviously, because when we were developing our first loan flow, and our head of risk came up with 50 questions he wants to ask. And we had to go through each question and ask, okay, how you plan to use it? He's like, well, maybe I will not be using it today, but maybe somewhere in the future this will. And we're not, okay, killing it. So we reduced our questionnaire from 50 questions to probably 7. Because again, we were thinking, okay, where else we can pull this data? Okay, you don't have to give us your name because we already saw your passport. So we can populate the name from there. Yeah, you don't have to give us your age because we saw your passport, we saw your ID. We can pull this data from your ID and populate it into your loan questionnaire and so on. So again, a lot of optimization of the flow. So today we have very good conversion of this flow. It's very simple. It's like 5 minutes, but at the same time very predictive in terms of risks, because we are pulling a lot of data from behind, from what we already know about customers, what he already answered us on the different flows.
I guess also on the customer service end, maybe, yeah, you can talk about, I guess, the GenAI chatbot. How did that come about, and maybe incorporating some of the principles you've talked about there.
Yeah, sure, of course. Chatbot, yeah, it was a bit of a painful project. Because
why was it painful?
Because it seems that the way it's being sold on the market, it's just, okay, get our solution and you will have proper GenAI, but that's so much not true. And the first mistake was to say, okay, we integrate with this company and we launch chatbot. This is not true. Never believe them when they say so. You integrate, this is just first and the smallest step. After that follows the huge analytics and training. So today we have 7 people training it. So, but even that, we are a little bit of proud because we created a completely new position on the market as a chatbot trainer. We also call them Pokemon trainer. But again, anyways, it helped to save much more in terms of operational expenses, to hire in more people to serve all the customers, by one basic simplest rule, that if you look into the data, and as I said, data is very, very important for actual launch, not technical launch of the AI, but real launch. And it's a daily data work. So when you look closer into data, you will see and you will compare the volumes of the time your, for example, customer care agents spend on answering questions. You will see that super simple questions, like my favorite, how po. That's probably the most common word is how po. So the simplest questions, it's like a Pareto rule, they will take 80% of your resources. And those simplest questions can be answered quite in a simple way. If you free up this 80% of your resource, they will be concentrated on the much more complicated issues. So, and helping customer much faster with the smart allocation of the chatbot, to make chatbot do what he's the best in doing, to answer a lot of different but quite simple tasks, while humans can concentrate on solving actual issues of customers. 3 minutes, I think it's max waiting time.
Right. And do you foresee, like, what are the use case applications for GenAI in the whole, like, digital banking kind of experience after customer service? Because I feel like chatbots is kind of like a intuitive, I guess, use case, given what we've seen in the market.
Sure. And also the simplest. But again, as I said, it's a lot of technology being out there, but actually training your models, that's when it becomes tricky. Probably next step would be on the biggest headache of all financial institutions, it's fraud. on identification of the customer, voice identification, and again, mostly with anti-fraud measures, and predicting the inconsistent behavior again for fraud, because you've seen a lot of public stories, right, in Philippines market about money being stolen. So those things definitely could be addressed by proper AI powered authentication and catching the fraudsters. Risk management, because fraud management is one thing. Another thing is risk management, like defining how likely you are to default your loan by the behavior that we could not think about as humans.
Right.
So we cannot think about it. For us, it doesn't make sense because we are looking for logic, we are looking for reason, consequence, narrative, we're looking for connection. AI doesn't. So he can just connect to completely unconnected for us
like
events.
Outlier factors.
Absolutely. Like what is the color of your, screensaver with the probability of you defaulting on the loan, which would never come to human brain, right? So those kind of things, definitely.
I also wanted to, you've dropped, I guess, hints of it throughout our conversation so far, but can you draw the connection between sort of really improving customer experience with, profitability, and especially given kind of the focus for Tonik these days in terms of like scaling its loan book and all that?
Yeah, sure. Well, with the growth, to eventually reach your break even, there are two things important: is how much you grow and how much you spend. Yeah, so if you grow faster than your spend is growing, you're good. If your spend is growing with the same speed, that's obviously bad. Yeah, so AI here helps us to contain the growth of our costs to a very reasonable level while growing the portfolio, because there are the parameters of, for example, how many customers can one customer care agent serve. Above this threshold, you have to hire more. Again, above the threshold, again to hire more. So you end up with scaling your headcount for everything, for underwriting, for customer due diligence and KYC, for customer care agents, and all this. You end up scaling and scaling and scaling with the growth. So AI helps, in our case, it's basically a chatbot, helps you to contain it. So eventually the growth is good enough for you to cover these expenses from your own revenue. So that definitely an optimization of things, and there are a lot. I think it's a science of how to optimize things when you are completely app-based and you see all the data, you see customers' behavior. It's just an infinite opportunities for optimization of those small features that would eventually, one by one, little by little, help you to reduce your costs while growing at a high speed.
Right. I also want to talk about stability and security. Where do you draw the connection there between customer experience and bank stability and bank security?
It's like you are sure your money will be there when you come back tomorrow,
I guess,
or you are sure that the bank will be there when you come back tomorrow.
I guess the responsiveness of the bank when you do a transaction, you know that it's gonna happen on time. It's not gonna get delayed, or when you open your app, for example, it's not gonna be under maintenance. Like most of the time, like maintenance levels are kept to a minimum.
For us, it kind of comes by default. Yeah, let's be honest. The banking experience standards and expectations in Philippines are not the highest in the world. So market is still quite underdeveloped. But we never benchmark Philippines. I care what new bank launched because I want to check new bank and their app experience and their processes and everything. So for us, stability of the app is such a basics that it comes without saying. I really hope that we are probably the most stable banking app. And the more I use the other applications, the more I'm proud of Tonik, to be honest, because that's definitely something from which we started. Because again, we applied to ourselves very high standards, not the Philippines market standards. We have a very big social listening and customer listening tools and all the amount of feedback that we are capturing. And the very fine-tuned process of working with that feedback. There is no feedback that comes unnoticed. And we are fixing issues like this within weeks' time for sure, maybe within days' time. It's in our DNA, it's in our principle of our work. So for us, stability of the transaction comes without saying. We are doing everything, and not just the customer care team, not just the back office team, but whole company, including IT, products, marketing, sales, everyone, to make sure we capture those issues and we not just resolve them, but we make sure they will never come back. Not just apply temporary fix, but apply permanent fix. This is another mantra that we've been learning with IT for for the last several years, but finally they learned it to the point that we are never have to come back to the same bugs.
No, I've definitely been a witness. I was part of the Lighthouse group from the very beginning. So I think one of my colleagues offered, "Oh, do you want to join Tonik's, beta tester group?" And I was like, "Sure." And then I witnessed all the, how rapidly kind of like issues were being resolved, especially even early on. One thing I also wanted to talk about was you did mention about looking to the benchmarks, right? The importance of benchmarks. And given the benchmarks that you're looking at globally, Nubank and all these other new banks globally, how do you see like digital banking? Like, what's the next step for digital banking in the Philippines? Do you think? Like, I guess apart from AI is kind of like.
We need proper ID. Let's start from that. We need proper ID. This is something that holding back not just digital banking, but holding back whole banking system and actually whole Philippines from making every member part of civilized, regulated banking system. Instead of going to 5/6s and paying unbelievable predatory fees on the loans just to go to the bank and take a proper loan, but they cannot because they don't have an ID. Because there are so many people still in this country without ID and properly verifiable ID. Because I'm sorry, but the paper from barangay cannot be read by our OCR engine, right? And it cannot be verified. There is nothing to verify it against. So proper verifiable ID that I can verify with the database of the government and make sure that I'm talking to exactly this person. That's probably would be the biggest step that Philippines need now, and hopefully it's coming. I heard good news, but when will be the day when it will reach us everyone? Because that is quite unique about Philippines. I didn't see other markets. I mean, the more we talk about other digital banks across the world, no one has this unique 25 ID situation on the market. It's completely unique. You should be proud of it, but hopefully it will be gone soon. And this is the next step to make a proper KYC for everyone.
Yeah. No, I think that's a pretty. It seems that now that I hear it, pretty obvious answer.
Yeah, it's a no-brainer, right?
Exactly.
And I keep saying it. I hope that one day BSP will hear me and they will enforce it for a proper fast implementation in the country.
Maybe for their 31st anniversary. I also want to talk about your working relationship with Greg. You did mention earlier that you worked with him at Platinum Bank. How has that relationship from back in Ukraine impacted the way that you work with him today at Tonik?
It's my third company with Greg already. It's because you believe that this guy, he came to win. That he will never start a project that he is not 100% sure, and that he will not apply 200% efforts to make sure it's successful. And he has already his success story in Platinum. And for me, I'm quite confident that Tonik is also a success story because Greg is here. Yeah, so that's why, when you're joining a startup, you will think twice, right? But for me, joining a startup, which is Greg's startup, is okay because I know we will succeed because I know him. He will never fail. He will never back off. He will make sure whatever happens that we are successful. So something like this faith that you don't think twice.
Right. What do you think is behind that kind of almost like stubbornness of Greg, right? And kind of like optimism about what he's doing and
He's super productive. He's super smart. And he's caring for the team in a bigger sense of it to be aligned and to be on the same page. So he spent so much efforts to talk to everyone in the company, so everyone up to the janitors understands why we are doing what we are doing, what we have to do to get to the next level and how we're going to be doing that. So he invests a lot really in that. So he keeps the team very aligned, which is very different from the other companies I worked for.